It might be a few $100,000 up to, I would say. But I do think you could walk away with, $2.5 to $3 million of.
That's kind of the number.
All the memories and all the stories and all the lives you've impacted along the way. You've got a nice asset.
Some days we keep on rolling.
All right, welcome back to Inspired or Acquired. This is the show where we talk to real business owners, give them a valuation on their business, and ask whether or not they would sell or they want to hold on. So we've got a fun one today. We're joined by Dr. Bob all the way from Alaska, and I've got my co-host Clint Fiore. So good to see you guys. Dr. Bob, how are you?
Doing good. Sun's shining. Snow's mostly gone. You can walk on a road without falling.
It's good. It's almost your season. So we're going to dig in today and talk about your incredible lodge that you have up there in Alaska, and talk about how it's grown and what the valuation could be. So why don't you just start? Tell us 30 seconds or a minute. What is All Alaska Outdoors?
So it's a road-based fishing lodge, about 2.5-hour drive from Anchorage. That is on a float plane lake that's about a mile long, kind of an ideal base station for doing remote flyouts, which is part of our repertoire. But of course, we're also on the Kenai Peninsula with the famous Kenai River. And being that it's a peninsula, we're surrounded by salt water. So using the road system, you can get to multiple destinations for ocean fishing or river fishing on this 50-mile long lower river, or there's another river that's up, a section of river that's above Ski Lac Lake. And so we have a very varied amount of offerings that include, drift trips, powerboat trips on the river, ocean trips, obviously, and powerboats, and then multiple different fly-out fishing destinations. So the emphasis is that, we put the money in the experiences, keep the cost a little bit lower by having you on the road system, where it's a lot cheaper to feed people when there's already restaurants that are doing that, and you've got a kitchen in your room and you can go to the grocery store. So it's kind of like trying to do a blended model between a remote fly-out fishing lodge and a local fishing lodge that basically focuses on the inexpensive experiences of boat trips. We've kind of got this blended model that sort of lets an intermediate sort of price point where you're still seeing a bunch of remote Alaska getting to do cool stuff. That was a little over 30 seconds, but yeah, I think it was a complex business model because it didn't fit any of the existing models.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I think it's, I've been spending some time watching the videos and looking at your site, and I love Alaska. I've only briefly been one time, but it's the kind of thing that's the kind of lodge I would want to go to. I mean, it's a great price point, offers a lot of great quality high-end services, but without breaking the bank like some of the more remote ones would. But I feel like you get the full Alaska, full experience, and it's just beautiful there. So you are living the dream for a lot of our watchers or viewers. Like, you're running a small business that you're making a living from, but it's in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, giving people unforgettable experiences. And so this is kind of a special show, and I am. As you probably know, I'm a business broker and M&A advisor by trade. So I help people figure out like what their business is worth and when is the right time to sell, and help them on that journey. And so, a lot of people sell so that they can go fish in Alaska and stuff, but you're already there. You're already there. So for this next little segment of the show, we do something different. We like to jump right into a quick ballpark business valuation, and where I'm going to kind of, as best as I can from the limited information today, tell you about what I think your business might be worth. And then we can go from there. So for this next part, let's keep the storytelling to a minimum. Let's just do some quick lightning round questions, and I'm going to just ping you with some questions, and I'll get to some answers here. Is that fair enough, Bob?
Okay. A quick
Yeah.
comment. Just you made a statement that I would probably contest, which is I'm making a living. And I guess technically you're right now in that after 25 years, this looks like it's going to cash flow to the point where it is going to be a significant, distributor of income into my pocket for the lodge itself. Now, I've made money because I am a guide, and the lodge pays me just like it would any other guide. But it is just now, after over 25 years, got to the point where I would say the lodge is cash flowing. So this was a long process, and we'll talk about that on the other side of that. But I didn't want to leave you with, I'm making a living. It's like, no, not quite. It's been a hobby farm, and I've been a doctor so I could afford to be a fishing lodge owner. I have old family farmers used to tell me, what would you do if you won the lottery? Well, we'd keep farming until the money ran out. It was kind of one of those deals for a long time,
Well, if you're not making a living, you're certainly making a life. I'll give you that.
I have no regrets in that. And now it's looking like a really fruitful plane ahead. So I'm happy.
Great. Well, talk me through. So you've been doing this for 25 years?
Well, we opened the lodge in 96. Okay. So what's the math on that? We're coming up on 30. I think this is our 28th year.
And how old are you now, Dr. Bob?
60.
60. And kids all grown, or like what's the family situation?
No, I've got 2 boys that are making grandbabies for us. We got the 4th one on the way, and the 3rd one just hit the ground a couple weeks ago.
Right on.
And then I have a daughter that just graduated from massage school, and for this upcoming year, she's going to be opening a massage studio here within my. Can we pause for a second?
Yeah. Well, this will be edited, so we'll cut that out, and you can just go back to talking about where you left off.
Yeah. So she's got a massage school, and completed massage school, and so I'm going to set her up here in this office, which is on the lodge. Well, it's annexed off. I own this property, but it's right next to the lodge. So we'll have massage offered through the lodge this summer, which will be a new development, which will be cool. Ultimately, I'm going to build a combination exercise and massage studio across from this office, and it'll tie into the lodge in that respect. And then I've got 2 kids that are still school age, a 13 and a 15-year-old.
Yeah. And are you an actively practicing doctor, or what kind of doctor are you?
Well, I trained in emergency medicine and came up here and got a job on the Kenai Peninsula right out of residency. And once I completed my residency and started working up here, I bought a home on the lake, and I bought the lot next to my home to build the lodge. Okay. So that was kind of the initial step there. And then being an ER doctor, which a typical full-time ER doctor works 12 to 15 shifts a month. So you have some free time to run a side business, right? Which was the perfect fit for this. And so then I basically incorporated with a couple of friends from Texas, and we basically did the paperwork in 95 and had the lodge we started in 94 building and kind of had the lodge constructed. 96 was our first year in business.
So today in 2024, are you still taking shifts at the doctor stuff?
No. I do I dabble in some really easy emergency medicine in really rural Montana. Because I like to pheasant hunt in the fall, and I like to walleye fish and turkey hunt in the spring, and that hospital will gladly take me for 2 or 3 weeks and give me a few shifts and cover all my expenses. So
that's cool.
I'm kind of set up down there in Montana. I get to hunt and fish in between shifts, and it's pretty easy work. And then I do a couple of shifts at the urgent care, but I have my own practice. We're in my medical building. It's a longevity practice. All those books behind you are about how to take care of your life. Okay. And from a doctor's perspective.
So you still have some income related to the
I do. It's about, yeah. I mean, I was at a stage where I didn't need ER medicine income
Yeah,
anymore.
but I'm sure it makes
But I
the
haven't given up all medical
yeah, I'm
income.
sure it makes the guests feel good knowing they've got an ER doc at the lodge. That's
Yeah, I always tell them like, "Hey, well, this is great. We're on a fly out, and you're an ER doc." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll probably be able to tell you what you're going to die of." I mean, I got no equipment, you know.
yeah.
It's like, "Yep, this looks like a heart attack. You're probably not going to make
Sorry,
it."
buddy.
But I press the button on the inReach, and so hopefully there's a helicopter heading this
Yeah.
way.
Awesome.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick break from the show just to tell you about our companies for a second. I'm Patrick Dichter and I own Appletree Business Services. We do quality accounting and tax nationwide. So if you're running a business or looking to buy a business, we'd love to help you out with accounting and tax services. You can find us at appletreebusiness.com. And Clint, tell us about Bison Business.
Yeah, Bison Business is my firm. We do nationwide M&A, so we help people buy and sell companies. Most of our customers have companies in the 1 to 20 million revenue range, profitable businesses. So if you've got one and you're ready to get acquired, you can reach out to us at bisonbusiness.com for a complimentary valuation. We can get you to market and get you sold. If you're a listener that's a buyer that wants to buy a company that size, make sure you're on our email list because we'll send you out deals first before they hit the market anywhere else. But we'd love to serve you anytime you're thinking of acquiring or selling your business. We want to be your first stop at Bison Business.
Awesome. Now back to the show.
Okay, so let's get to the dollars and cents here. You filled out a form for us, and I have here that you did, 1.7 in revenue?
That's what we did last year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that a big year for you, or is that kind of a typical year?
that was a big jump. Yeah, that was we did 1.2 the year before, so
Okay.
we crushed it.
Awesome.
And the year before was the first time we broke $1 million. And prior to that, we hit in the 900s in 2006 and 2007, and then 2008. I think we did 375 after the collapse.
Yeah, understand. So, okay, so 1.7, you said, you're finally at the point where you're starting to make some profit, and that would be about 400 to 500K of profit last year on 1.7.
Yeah, that looks like that's about right. I mean, that was above operating expenses.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my big question is it sounds like you own the lodge and you do you currently have any debt on it?
Not anymore. We paid it off in 2 years after my new partner came on.
Are you paying yourself rent or anything like that? Or is that 400 or 500K because you own it outright and you don't have any rent or anything like that?
We're paying nothing. Yeah, no, we just have operating expenses, typical insurance, utilities, paperwork that the government bestows upon us, all, and then basically subcontracted vendors providing experiences and then paying a lodge manager and housekeeping and that kind of stuff.
So for me to get anywhere close on a ballpark, we're going to have to talk about assets on this. We usually don't have to on a lot of these deals, but this is an asset heavy deal. You've got a lodge. Do you also own any boats or airplanes?
The lodge does not.
Okay. Is that just all contracted?
That's not true. The lodge owns 2 riverboats.
Okay.
And we have 2 guides that utilize that they're still subcontractors, meaning they get their own licensing and do all of that and provide their own insurance. And then we just lease them the boat. Basically, we pay them a little less than we would a guide who had his own boat.
What do you think the approximate value of the real estate would be?
Boy, I mean, I could probably try to look at, I haven't pulled up and memorized the various buildings as far as what the local government assesses them for property tax. So I'm kind of just trying to grab from memory. About 2 million.
Okay. And then the riverboats,
that would be
not super valuable, like tens of thousands.
20 grand each.
How much?
About 20 grand
Okay.
each. And we just bought a 4-wheeler, or 6-wheeler I think that's 25,000.
Yeah.
And we're going to install this new dock system that I suspect does increase the value a little, close to what we're putting in it, I would guess.
Okay.
Um,
So
so
for everyone's benefit here, we've got 2 million and change of stuff, and most of that is a lodge. We've got other equipment and 2 river boats, and 1.7 earnings, 4 to 500K profit without any debt service to pay for all the real estate and toys here. So the big issue on trying to value a business like this is that, like, sometimes the stuff, like, as you just said earlier before the show, that you're about to do a $100,000 investment on the docks, and you're always making improvements on the property. And that's very common for these legacy, multi-decade properties like this. I see this in wedding venues. I see this in my family's like nursery business. We have a garden center with a bunch of property. We're always improving. Every time we have a good year, we do build something else or do another project. And after you operate for a long, long time, and real estate tends to appreciate, the dirt appreciates, and often the buildings appreciate in places that are desirable, like where you're at. And sometimes it's hard for the business to be worth more than the stuff that the business owns, including the real estate and its equipment and everything else. And so when I think about it through the eyes of a buyer, is if I bought your lodge, essentially that's the biggest thing I'm buying is the real estate. I feel like that's, you said it yourself, like it's kind of an integral part of this whole operation, and your strategy and your pricing is like being where you're at and having that beautiful lodge and real estate that everyone can enjoy staying at. And so I'm thinking, well, it's great that you are able to make 400 or 500K there, but I'm going to have to pay, I'm going to have to get a mortgage, or I'm going to have to get, some sort of loan here. And that's what you just told me earlier, was like, yeah, I wasn't making much money until we grew, and then we paid it off. And now it's finally to where I can start making some money here. So when I'm a buyer, I'm thinking, man, I'm going to have to repeat that. I'm going to have to go, get some debt. And then I may have, a few $100,000 of debt service to cover that much of assets. And then there goes the profit, because now I'm just servicing the debt. And so often when you go to sell an asset heavy business like yours, it's hard to get a lump sum at closing that's much more than the sum of the parts, because everything is so valuable. And so I almost view it as like the lodge operations, the business with the great reviews and the great reputation, is part of what is paying for the upgrades and maintenance and the paying off of your debt, and like over the years. And that's what's allowing you to sell it for that real estate and assets for top dollar when you go to sell it. And that's what allowed you to pay for it to pay for itself along the way. But you don't always get like a big windfall of increase over the top of that unless you had earnings that could greatly outpace like paying off the debt and still putting money in an owner's pocket. So I think you may have some goodwill value. That would be the intangible value above the value of the physical assets, but it's not going to be a ton of goodwill value. It might be a few $100,000 up to, I would say, $1 million maximum of, once we backed out kind of like the debt service math of a typical buyer that would have to leverage in to buy this thing. And so sometimes the way you exit a business like this would be more with like an earn-out situation, where you're like, hey, I want you to pay me fair price for the lodge and all the stuff, and then I want to keep supporting you with bookings and just make sure as much as possible we keep this reputation intact. And if anyone needs to call me or have me vouch for you, or if I want to help with some customer service for new clients after I slow down, and then you might be able to work out a deal for the next 3 to 5 years. You get a piece of all the action, like you have an earn out for all the guests that come to stay. And that might be the easiest way for a buyer to agree to compensate you for the business activity and not just the physical assets. So yeah, I think your exit someday would look like you could get, $2 million in change probably at closing, because a buyer would be able to get a traditional loan for the real estate and boats and physical assets. And then for the intangible value on top of that, it's going to take the form most likely of seller financing, where you say, okay, let's just agree you're going to pay me another $500,000 because of our name and reputation and because of how many bookings we have and all those great.
And the infrastructure, I mean, like the website's worth a lot.
Yeah.
Because it is not easy to build that, and Patrick has been with me on that journey.
So you want to get you want to capture some value there, but like banks are going to have a hard time lending on that value because they can't repo that website, right. And they can't, and they're going to do the cash flow math and be like, well, no, actually we need all the physical assets to support this thing. And so you may have to seller finance that upside or that goodwill on top, or you may have to do it in a form of an earnout, or some combination thereof to get you like that additional juice on top of the physical assets. But I do think you could walk away with, $2.5 to $3 million of total pre-tax value here, and you own 45%. Is that correct? Of the lodge? So yeah, I mean, you would stand to be close to half of that. So it's definitely quite the asset you've created. And besides just the intangible things you can never put a price tag of, all the memories and all the stories and all the lives you've impacted along the way, you've got a nice asset that you've started from scratch and has really become something that's got multiple seven figures of value here. But when I throw that out there to you, is this deflating at all? Do you think it's worth more? Like, was this a different number than you expected?
Honestly, that's kind of what the number. I would guess that at our current, marketing success, profitability picture, which until something bad like a 2008 or a COVID happens, I don't really see any chinks in that armor. Mm-hmm. I mean, the current marketing strategy, those videos, they're not going anywhere. Yeah. People just keep seeing them. They keep driving leads to us that are like pre-sold. I mean, these people email you and they're ready to book. It's the most bizarre thing. The transition from how it used to be to now, since that niche got filled, that really sort of captured what I offer and the uniqueness of it and the things that you pointed out in your kind of relay statement to me in the beginning. It's like it made people understand exactly that, which is a complex concept. And because it did such a good job of presenting it in such a beautiful light with such artistic, inspiring sort of experiences, that people are ready to book. So it's when I look at that, and I think that's going to go downstream, unless there's a huge falter where there's just people don't have disposable income anymore, and that devalues an asset that like this, because it depends on disposable income. If we're in this same state 5 years from now, that's kind of what I expect. I think business itself and the profitability of it is worth an extra $1 million on top of the assets. That is about what I would have figured. I mean, I probably wouldn't let it go for less than $1 million because I know the value and the work that's gone behind it and the fact that it's working,
So for listeners that maybe aren't connecting the dots here, so Bob used to go to trade shows and like travel expos and then started marketing more online. And then 2 years ago, there was a group called Wildfly Productions that does amazing YouTube videos for fly fishing. And they did a video at your place that's gone viral and has 2 million plus views now, right?
Yeah, and that was just a little over a year. It's at 2.1 the last time I looked. And then we did a second video with them this last September that's not at the 2-month mark yet. And the last time I looked, it was 110 or 115,000 views. And the leads come in. We basically are not hardly spending money on advertising anymore. That's doing it. A little bit of pay-per-click to fill July and August, the meat and potato part of the summer, which is the easier part to fill for most lodges.
Those videos are real assets. I mean, because they're going to keep producing for you. They have a long life cycle on YouTube, those big ones that hit like that. So I think they're going to probably keep driving business your way for years to come. And so that is, if a buyer's buying the business someday, like that's a major thing they're putting in the purchase agreement is they want that YouTube channel or the YouTube, whatever intellectual property and intangible stuff you have. Right. It's that secret sauce, the magic that's driving customers. They're going to try to keep that going.
Right. I mean, anybody that I sold the lodge to, I'd be delivering my intellectual property and like my repertoire on fly out ultimate expeditions. I mean, there's nobody on the planet that knows the stuff I know, and I'm going to be giving it to somebody, so there's another asset that they're getting,
I don't know if we told you this, but Clint flies planes as well. So how many trips do Clint and I have to take to be able to buy the lodge and be fully trained? So I'll be the fly fishing brains. He'll be the pilot. Is this like a 4-week training program we need to do, or?
Yeah, it's quite a bit of training. There's a lot of intellectual property, but I'm at the stage now where our growth is such that I can't handle the volume anymore on these trips. So I'm training guides and pilots to, we're going to have 2 beavers this year instead of 1.
But you're ultimately
they're channeled through the air charter service, but they're going to be parked in front of the lodge. So, no, you might be interested in this, and if not, just let me know. But I got to witness a lodge sale from a friend of mine. So a competitor, friendly. In fact, he's actually, a pretty close personal friend. And I learned some stuff. Number one, I learned you do not sell a lodge on any day other than December 31st or January 1st. Okay? You cannot let ownership and work cross into a new year and then sell the lot. I mean, what happened was there was drags on the sale and various things, and exactly what you described. He got paid, the bank probably provided a loan enough for the assets, and then the guy agreed to a loan personal or to pay the business owner, the previous business owner, an amount as a bunch of payments for a period of time, and then a balloon payment for the value that was not the assets, which is the business, which he showed was profiting very similar numbers to ours and about the same size lodge and similar infrastructure. So what I learned was, man, it got complex. He actually had to run the lodge the first week of the clients. And then it got into who gets the profit from that? And, what about the expenses from that? It's like, no, man, if you're going to sell a lodge, it's like when you're closing down on the end of the year, that buyer better get with it, or I'm managing this lodge for 1 more year and we'll try again next year. Because I will not go through what he went through. There was like a lot of fighting and arguing, and I'm not into stress. I'm at the stage of my life where I'm trying to keep my stress level low.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. That's a great experience to learn from vicariously of the mistakes and wins that he got. But your exit, ultimately, the goodwill piece, the intangible piece above the assets, a lot of the maximization there is going to depend on how generous you are with terms. If you're willing to stretch out a longer length of payments, or subject to there's not another financial collapse along the way that makes the bottom fall out here, then you could probably negotiate a higher total price. But if you're like, hey, I just want X dollars in cash on top of the assets at closing, and then I'm done, you'll never see me again, then that comes down a bit, from what people will pay. So that's going to be a function of your trust to the buyer and the way you negotiate the terms on that intangible piece of it through the earnout or the seller financing. And so definitely can walk you through that and give you pointers when that time comes. And then also like the timing, like, yeah, January 1 is convenient, but there is a solution for with brokers and attorneys like that know how to do this stuff. Like, we can close deals anytime, and it can all get done. But you bring up a great point, because there's so many moving pieces to this that you have to account for. Like, all right, who's paid deposits and and then
My view is how I would
yeah.
do this if I was going to sell it. I would try to make it as close to the new year as possible,
Mhm.
and I would say the sale is the monies that have been paid for this year that's upcoming, that you're going to now be the owner and manager of the lodge. Those monies have to be in the bank account. Okay. I mean, that was not just, they didn't know, you know what I mean? It got to, you spent money that was for next year, and the buyer thought the seller was spending lodge money on personal stuff. And I don't think he really was, because I know the guy, but there was some confusing aspects because he had used some personal credit cards to put into the bank. He deposited money personally into the account,
Mhm.
and the buyer, of course, didn't realize that money, which looked like an asset, was really the guy's personal money. There was some real confusing stuff. So I would just look at it as, hey, you go down the list. Anything that was left over from the year that we're talking about selling this, that's the two owners now. Now, their obligation when you buy this close to the new year is that the bank account has the deposits and all monies paid for the upcoming year and any future years. Those are in the bank account. That those go with the lodge, and we're making the sale because that money has to go towards managing and running the lodge, or they're losing that money. And that was not clear in this sales deal. And then they fought about it. And the bad part was that it was one of those agreements where he agreed to help them manage it, and now you're not talking to one another very nicely, So that's not a good deal. I mean, and I learned, I thought, to me, when I analyzed it, I said the KISS principle is make sure it happens right around the new year, and that you're not actually doing a bunch of work that you should be, he basically had to stay out there and keep selling, okay, for that whole spring when the other guys don't own the lodge. And so how do you create that value? You know what I mean? You can't just give up the marketing and then turn the lodge over and go, yeah, but your first year you're going to be empty. Have fun.
That's tough. That's where it's key to really have your accounting dialed in, and then the purchase agreement with, your legal. You definitely want to be sure on like who owns accounts receivable, or if there's like work in progress like that, like how that could look. So as we're wrapping here, the last, I don't know, 5-8 minutes that we have here, Bob, just curious, like what do you think the upside could be? So you did 1.7 last year. As you look at the next 3 to 5 years, like if you were to push
like if the economy stays
price,
like it is, Bob, like you're somewhat constrained by season, by length of your season, and then by your
4 months
your real estate and how many people you can accommodate. Like what, like are we near capacity here, or
No, that 1.7 was across the 4 months. Let's say that was probably 70% occupancy. I mean, because the shoulder seasons don't completely fill, and we end up with holes here and there because of 5-day packages leave 2-day hole somewhere and that kind of thing. So, as supply demand picture gets better, meaning the marketing keeps working really well, you're going to fill in most of that leftover 30%. So I think it could conceivably clear over 2 million, and about half of that increase would be profit and half would go to subcontractors, because the extra money comes with expenses, but not some of the basic infrastructure expenses, which don't increase. Like your insurance doesn't go up. Your utilities really don't go up effectively. Housekeeping, you got to turn over more rooms. So it's probably somewhere along the lines at that level. Once you've got your other, your fixed costs paid for, if we did an extra 500,000, which I suppose if we got really, really packed and did really, really well, which I think we're probably looking at, sort of reaching those milestones in a stable economy, with our current marketing strategy, I would guess in a couple years, we probably will be over 2 million. And I suspect the number for annual income above fixed operating plus, the expensible stuff, not counting loans and depreciation and that sort of thing, not like what your K1 would look like, but just kind of profit loss statement. I'm going to guess we're talking 600,000-700,000, about a maximum after paying everybody.
I'm getting the same thing back to the napkin. Yeah, that's what I think.
So that would service loan debt if you bought a loan, and you could keep running it like this. And, I because of those wildfly videos, as long as whoever bought it didn't just destroy the reputation quickly, I don't know where the failure is going to be when the economy and outside factors cause it to fail, not because the business plan isn't going to work.
So how do you think about exit timing? Like what to you, you've been doing this so long, what to you is going to be the sign that is it a personal thing? Like, is it when you're just stick a fork in me, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore? Or is it when you feel like
probably
you
when
reached a financial target, or like how do you think about it?
Well, when my wife and I were the ones that were having to run the entire business, and it was sort of dominating our lives, and she's wanting to be a mom and a grandma and a cat rescue person, which I'll give you my GoFundMe page after we're done. It was like, I don't know how much longer I want to do this. The experiences, the taking people fishing, I'm not burnt out at all. Am I tired? Absolutely. End of September, I'm beat. I've been going hard, but am I ready for a break? And am I glad they're winter and it's not a 12-month season? Actually, yeah, I don't know that I'd want to try to do that pace for 12 months. But now that it's to the point where it looks like I'm training people who are younger to be able to basically reproduce me, and I have a lodge manager that loves the job and does it really well. It's a labor of love for her. It's like, it is her kid, and that was who she became. If those kind of pieces stay in place, I don't really need an exit strategy. I can see where at some point I'm more of a patriarch figurehead than a hands-on taking people flying anymore. But I could see owning this, especially when it might be this turnkey business for my daughter who's doing massage, and she makes all her money in the summer. And I got another daughter that's a horse girl, and she keeps her horse at a lady's place who's probably going to be ready to sell that, and maybe I set her up with a horse, so I could end up being this gigantic family business that has multiple tendrils, and if it's working, I probably wouldn't sell it at all. On the other hand, about 70 is when I think I'll probably be ready to quit flying and hard to insure. They don't, at the end of the day, they just don't want commercial pilots over 70, and so that you're losing that part of it. So now it's like, okay, is it just a business? And it's like a big return like that. Let's say we recrunch those numbers 5 years from now, and it's, you could probably get 4 million for this, and it's like, I'd probably take the 2 million and figure out how to waste it so my kids don't get it for make them work for their money like I did, and we can go sit on lots of beaches and not be worried about checking emails, I don't have a real, it's all going to depend on how things flow over the next 5 years, whether I'll be looking at an exit strategy for 5 to 10 years from now. But that would be if I did.
Yeah.
At age 70, I'd probably look at it and go, how hard is this to oversee? How much, oversight and time consumption is it on my part with the current people that I have in place as far as managing the infrastructure and the business model? And are those people turning over enough where it's a pain in my butt that I'm constantly seeking the next person and hoping they don't fail and I have to fire them? Or do I just happen to have somebody who's like, yeah, you made my life, you gave me a living, and I'm never going to give it up, and I'm just going to keep, which is what I think I have right now in the manager. If that piece stayed in place and you're like, God, at the end of the year, there's always $600,000 for us to split, and I'm not hating it, and my kids are working in the infrastructure and making livings, it's like, I just basically figure out who's going to be stupid enough to say they own it when I die.
That's great. That's a great place to be. Well, we're bumping up against time here, Bob, but this was really fun to just hear how you're doing and think about what this could look like and learn from your buddy's sale as well. So we'll stamp this as not yet ready to sell, but if people want to find you online, where should they go to connect with you in the lodge?
Allalaska.com, and the very first slider window, the very first slide, click on the little link to the video, which is a 1.5 minute long video of me pleading with you to watch the wildfly videos, because we recognize that if you watch that video and at the end of the day, this sort of meets your needs analysis, you're probably done shopping. I mean, it just paints us in a very true but very favorable light, and it does a great job of encapsulating what a week at the lodge is like. Even if your venue is going to be a little different than theirs, maybe you're not a fly fisherman, but you get an idea of what it's like to come here, how we're set up, what the whole purpose of our operation is, and you get an idea of how we do
Awesome.
things.
All right. We'll go check it out and watch the video. And that's a wrap. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
All right. Great talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Clint.
Nice to meet you too. Appreciate it.